Hello.
Hello, Glenn.
Hello, Gerd. How are you?
Is this Glenn? It doesn't sound like Glenn.
It's Glen too.
Oh, Glenn too.
Yeah.
The clone. They cloned you.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah. I used to be called Sneezy.
Sneezy.
Yeah.
Why was that?
That's when I was prior to the Ice Age, and before I came back on this journey. They wanted to call me Sneezy, but they decided that I would be better suited to be called Snot. So that's why I have a sign and it says, I am not. Because you can't use the first letter.
What's going on up there today?
Oh, I'm just waiting for a cat call. I'm waiting for directions on whether we're going to do a test of the communications tonight.
Yeah, I noticed the post you put the other day, or was it yesterday or the day before, about Tiger Woods. Why were you mentioning?
Well, I don't believe for a minute that he spent time with prostitutes. I think that's his cover. I don't think Tiger Woods, as a matter of fact, spends time with women.
You said he was like a feminine?
Yeah.
Type of guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that Swedish connection of a wife was arranged by his mother-in-law, and if he's going to get caught doing something, the least of two evils in his position is to make out like he was having affairs with prostitutes. I don't think it was prostitutes, at least not female prostitutes.
Oh, so you're saying he's getting like blackmailed, or
Well, he would have been in a worse position had he had to admit that he was gay.
I think about that, like, nowadays, like, it's pretty much the norm now. And people admit that. Like,
yeah, but they have to lose their job.
Oh.
See, he was trying to save
like his name or something? Or?
His run at the golfing, winning the most tournaments of any player in the history of the game. And I think he's in second place now with 16 or 17 tournaments. And he needs, I think, 23 to become the number one player of all time. And I think that indiscretion with males, or even worse, children, may be the thing that he's trying to cover up.
You think that was like implanted in the egg when he was made?
Oh, of course. He's a robot. I mean, he's in fact not to blame for who he is, no more than he should be given credit for being a perfect golfer.
Yeah.
I think he plays golf according to his instructions, and he could win every tournament. He could win every tournament in the first round on the Thursday if he wanted to, but there would be nobody watching. And the media needs that there be a question there as to whether or not he can win. So he's not allowed to win every tournament. And therefore, it's like throwing a fight. He throws the tournament on demand. I don't think he would ever lose a tournament if he was just allowed to play what he's been made to do.
I guess I got to give that idea to the people that he could lose.
Yeah. And every time he loses, it's almost obvious. He makes decisions that are not Tiger Woodsy. He uses the wrong club. He insists on doing the same mistake over and over again. And that's not him.
You think Jordan? This guy Jordan. I haven't heard anything.
Michael Jordan?
Yeah, Michael Jordan. I've never heard anything about him and any nefarious activities on the side.
Well, all professionals, cop, pro, light.
Yeah.
The cops and the pros are basically robots. And they do what they are told to do. Period. So I don't see any exception to the rule.
Oh, yeah.
But this is a period in time, the last 5 or 10 years there since Muhammad Ali, where black men have had their turn, and it's now time to move on. So they're all being destroyed one after the other. White men had their turn before then, and right now it appears as if they're going to be moving towards Asian.
That's why they had the Yao Ming.
Yeah. Yao Ming and Tiger lost to a Korean there.
But he's Asian himself, Tiger was.
Yeah, he's only partly Asian.
Yeah. I guess he symbolized the transfer.
Yeah, and I'm not even sure his mother was his mother.
Yeah.
I think he was presented to his dad in a box.
Yeah.
Because that's the only way you can be imprinted. And the way he had a relationship with his dad is the way most children have a relationship with their mothers. And therefore, he had to be born in a lab, and his dad was the first one that he saw when he came out of the cardboard box.
Oh, man. But they don't like, she has to be, like, inseminated or something, right?
Well, all of that can be done in a lab.
But don't you get more, like, problems if it's not brought to term inside a woman?
Not if you began as a woman. If you began as a woman in someone's body and you were aborted at the tube time and your gender was changed, you come out as a male. And there's no physical problem there. It's even the opposite. You're an athlete beyond other athletes. Lance Armstrong, for example, is another one of these athletes beyond other athletes.
So yeah, you said he could have been sleeping with children.
No, I didn't say that. I said that would be the worst.
Yeah.
If they brought out a story such as that. I don't know what Tiger Woods does in his spare time. You know, but those are all things that they make them do.
You think about it,
like Michael Jackson.
Yeah. Like you think about it though, and you look at history. The Catholic Church at one time, they used to marry like 16-year-olds or younger to...
Hey, popes used to have 12-year-old boys hanging around with them when they'd go to big meetings in France or other places. It is my opinion that there are no longer any Christian leaders of the Vatican. That was converted a long time ago, and the leaders now are Zoroastrian Judeans. And Poland is a country that most people believe to be Catholic. But in fact, it was just an extension of Germany, like Austria and the other places in the neighborhood. And that was all populated by Judeans from 500 BC. Not Jewish, Judean. Jewish is only the lower class pawns on the chessboard, whereas the Judeans are the guys on the back row, the knights, the bureaucrats, the bishops, kings, queens.
Yeah, and I was looking up the word Daniel in the butt of the book, book called Daniel. I think Daniel was described as a Judean, that he came from Judea. Yeah. And
these are the people who were taken off to Babylon in 586 BC.
Trained in that thinking.
And Zoroastrian was their reprogramming. And they were kept there for 49 years.
Yeah, and one of those prophets, I think his name was Daniel. And he was, I read a little bit about him. He knew the rules of the stars. And all that stuff. And he was made like one of the top advisors, I guess, to the king at the time.
Yeah, if you look at the stories long before that of the 18th dynasty in Egypt, the people who were in charge were not the pharaohs. The pharaohs were cosmetic. The people who were in charge were the seers, and they were priests and bureaucrats. Sometimes just priests, sometimes bureaucrats, sometimes both. But that's just another word for genetic engineer.
Yeah, when you look at history, even today, like a lot of people of prominence, they give a lot of authority to these people who knew how to read the stars. So. And when you look at stuff for astrology and stuff like that, it's just magic, and then the word magic goes back to Persia.
Yeah. I am not a believer in astrology determining your day-to-day activity. But I certainly believe that they have used the stars as benchmarks on the bigger plan. And if you follow the activities in the stars, you'll have a heads up on some of the cataclysmic events that are about to occur, such as Cassiopeia, which, if you look at the sky, is at some time of the year like letter M, and later on in the year it flips over and becomes a W. And should there be a supernova in the vicinity of Cassiopeia, it would be a sign of some cataclysmic event that will be induced on Earth at that period in time. The other activity in the stars involves the Big Dipper, Ursa Major, and Ursa Major is like
Major Ruth.
Yeah, it's a pot, and mess of potage. It's made up of a number of stars. I forget now, 7 or 8. That delineate its shape, but the problem for that surviving is that 2 of the stars orbit in an opposite direction to the rest of them, whether there are 4 or 5 more, 6 maybe, I don't remember. But once those 2 fly or orbit past what makes them appear to be part of the Big Dipper from Earth, it'll be like the Big Dipper sprang a leak. And it will be no more because the shape won't be there. And that will be a hint of something that is about to happen, probably the flushing of the big toilet at Lake Superior.
Whatever happened to that? You used to talk about Eros or a rock. It was like, because you said
the rocks falling from the sky is the third cataclysmic event.
Because you said it was the moon, but there's other methods that you mentioned too.
Yeah. The question about rocks falling from the sky always comes to the floor when there's a debate on that, and the possibilities include the moon breaking up as a result of some activity from Earth that would shoot rockets at it, and eventually it would break into pieces, and the pieces would all kind of tumble down towards Earth, and that's why they wrote a song called Moon River. It'd be like a river of rocks coming at the Earth. And of course, at this end, as the Earth turns and gets hit, it's like being hit by a Gatling gun or a machine gun that will just sprinkle the entire northern hemisphere. The other possibility that can induce that is that we on Earth do something to a comet, such as Eros, and deflect it in a manner in which it whatever comet it is, hits the moon and does the same thing, breaks it up, and the pieces come falling down. Now, the allegory for the moon breaking up is the holiday you have on Halloween. October 31st, Halloween. Hollow moon. Take the W, flip it over like you do in Cassiopeia, and the two E's can be O's. They are part of a diphthong, and therefore the word is hollow moon.
Yeah. And I've seen plenty of allegories in movies where they talk about this.
And of course, the other one is fire and brimstone coming out of the ground, and that's when you're concerned about CERN. And Fermi in Chicago, and the one in Stanford University in California there. I had the name on last week. I forget now.
Yeah, you were telling me. It's SLAC. SAC.
Yeah. SAC with an L.
Yeah.
Cassiopeia with an L.
So all these different but so yeah, from what I'm seeing in like movies and stuff, like these guys like Neanderthal, it doesn't even seem like they exist anymore as a race.
Well, they don't need to exist as a race. They need to exist as DNA. And that's why there is a term they use, sack of shit. There's a bag full of coprolite someplace, and you can make all the Neanderthalers you want.
How did do you think that even like they reproduce like any other species?
Well, they did at one time, but there was a cataclysmic event in their lifetimes which killed a large portion of them, didn't kill, but froze another part of them, and the survivors were able to assist the thawed-out Neanderthalers, who were idiot savants, to form a computer, but the others were basically fossilized turds, the ones that had died, and it was worked out by the computer how you bring it back to life. How do you get back the person that died from its coprolite? So although we are taught in school that there is only one way for mammals to be born, and that is through an egg that is fertilized, the second way is coprolite and DNA being genetically engineered to be brought back to life. It's not much different than a seed in the ground can make a pumpkin or an oak tree or giant trees in California there where you can drive a car through the middle. You can almost not imagine that at one stage of the game that was a seed. So how does a seed get to be a big tree? It's by the merging of chemistry that induce life water being a principal part of that. But that just by itself tells you that if it can be done in nature, it can be reproduced in a lab.
Yeah. Can you imagine that? That you lived before, but you were brought back by...
Yeah, I can imagine it. Because I was.
That's crazy, man, just to be like, I was brought back in the lab, I've done this.
Yeah. I suggest you were too.
Oh, man. I wonder which lab it was, man. I wonder if it was underground.
Well, there is a lab in the Middle East, and it's Sheba Farms. Today, kind of under the control of Israel, was part of Lebanon and Syria, when Syria included Lebanon. There is one in North America, and it's called Labrador. A lot of Clinton visits to northern Quebec have been documented in the past.
Speaking of the Clintons, I just can't get that. Like, these guys, these people, they're brother and sister, right?
They could very well be.
And they're having sex with each other? Like, it's...
They could very well not be. Just because there's a child they declare to be theirs doesn't mean they made it.
Yeah, they just, it's like a business.
Yeah, they basically took responsibility for it. It may have been made in a lab, and it may have been partly prepared in a lab and then introduced into Hillary to finish the job. But you certainly only need to look at her.
Look at the
child, and it doesn't look like the parents.
How much of the population you think is made in the lab?
Well, if I had a guess, since one person can then create 4 generations, imagine that a person that's made in a lab has 4 children, and those 4 children have 12 children, and the 12 have 40 children, and the 40 have... So for each one made in a lab, you're looking at a few hundred offsprings that carry the genes either on the surface or recessive gene. So it wouldn't take very long to repopulate the Earth to a point where the ones who were born in a lab or stem from those born in a lab are the majority, if not the total population. I believe that the ones who have no genetic engineering are few and far apart. And they would have to be in some enclave in Brazil or in the jungle of Africa someplace, not to have come in contact. That's why slavery was instituted. It was a way of merging the races.
Yeah, and I see how the races, when you probably an interesting study is they call it ethnology. Studying of the races. I've seen a book. It was like really expensive. It was like, and it went into all like the Aborigines and all these different races. Have you ever done any research on that?
Only surface stuff in passing, because that's not my task. I'm more oriented towards identifying who should live and who should be dealt with at the end.
Yeah. There's a lot of people, man. I'm starting to look at it, man, at the whole big picture, and there's really a lot of people who really aren't contributing to, I guess, creation.
Yeah, well, that's a position I've come to as well more recently, because I used to feel that no one deserved to die for anybody else's benefit. But you have to stop and ask yourself the question, those people who knowingly are leading the world towards mass murder, genocide of human beings for the purpose of making a better slave in the future. Mm-hmm. Can you feel sorry for those people not being allowed to live? And I've basically come to the conclusion that should people who have caused that problem and continue to cause that problem die in some cataclysmic event, that I'm not going to lose any sleep over it.
Yeah. But those people, too, I think they're robots, too, like they were made.
Everybody is a robot until they're 40. After the age of 40, you should have had experiences that begins an awakening in you. Now, because you're younger than that, you're coming out much faster than we used to in the old days. Yeah. So you have more knowledge than we did when we were your age, and therefore you've arrived at a place much earlier than we did. But in any event, between the ages of 40 and 60 are the ages where you're supposed to become an adult. And as an adult, you're responsible for the things you do during that period. You're not responsible for things you did prior to that, but most people who aren't 40 aren't in charge of anything. So it's that period of 40 to 60 and 60 to 80 which determines how much responsibility you have.
So a guy like Maurice Strong, I think he needs to really do something, because it seems like he's knowingly helping destroy the people.
Yeah, especially if your name is Maurice.
And look where he's moving. He's moving to places where people will most likely to survive.
Yeah, and he's spent a lot of time in China and a lot of time in Canada, and both are linked. The Three Gorges Dam and the Gore Bay blind thrust at Sault Ste. Marie have a lot of things in common. And the prime ministers of Canada have a lot of things in common with all of that. You know, the guy that's there now looks like a robot, and his name is Harper. and you know, when you're playing the harp, you're getting close to the last days.
Yeah.
It's a wrap. And the one before him, Mulrooney, is a lawyer, and he's been acting as a lawyer for the Three Gorges Dam, and he works for a firm in Montreal called Ogilvy Renault, and Ogilvy is the lawyer to Queen Elizabeth. The guy that was there before him was Pierre Trudeau, and his full name was Pet Pierre Elliott Trudeau. And Pierre is a rock, Elliott is a toilet, Trudeau is a turd in water, or a hole of water, but it's T-U-R-D is a turd.
What do you know about, like, these Nordic countries, Scandinavian countries? Like,
well, Scandinavian country are Scandinavian countries. They are led by the Swedes, and the Swedes are the Medes, who have become the weeds. And they are basically inclined to bureaucracy, and therefore probably can be easily linked to the seers of Egypt and the bureaucracies of Egypt.
Yeah, I was looking up that, because when you look at that area, it's like a peninsula, and they have Norway on one side and Sweden on the other side, and I think from what the encyclopedia said, like they still had a king. Like,
oh yeah, king in Denmark and king in Sweden and king in Norway.
Whoa, and they what's it called? And it was saying something about like you couldn't be a king there or be on top dog unless you were a Lutheran. They only accepted Lutherans to be. Yeah.
Well, if you look at the shape of Europe, the face of Europe is Portugal. The hair on the head, which is Spain, is the Pyrenees. And then there's a second face, and it's the face of France, which is shaped like a hippopotamus. So Europe is a two-faced place. And where you would find the pons and the medulla, if you continue the head as a body, you find Belgium and Holland. And the Scandinavian countries would therefore be like the hair on top. And you know what hair is in fairy tales. They're Alice in Wonderland.
Antarctica?
Yeah, it's the rabbit with the vest. And he's the boss in the background. You know. Spelt Hare, because Antarctica is the shape of a big white bunny.
Yeah. I've seen that in a show too. They admit that Atlantis is Antarctica. I've seen that. That's been admitted on TV.
Yeah, well, it's on the maps prepared by the largest map makers in the world. Smithsonian Institution.
Where is that?
In New York, or in Washington. Smithsonian Institution. It's part of the mall.
Have you ever been there? Or?
No, I don't hang around museums. I left that place long ago as a fossil. What they have in museums is muses and ruses. You can tell, though, on the net that they are part of the system because they report on things, and when you start noticing that they're including secret messages in their maps by putting in sfumato as part of the oceans and faces hidden and stuff like that. As soon as you notice, you get blocked.
Cause I've been planning to go to a museum, around here.
One of the ladies in charge of their mapping for volcanoes, her name is Sally Kuhn, Kuhn. And if you know anything about the history of the United States, the Kuhn-Loeb connection funded the migration of Eastern Europeans to New York and then beyond beyond the Mississippi to steal the land back from the Indians. And so she's in the museum. You can be certain that she got there because of her family connections. Now, Kuhn-Loeb operates under a new name in the U.S., and their name is American Express. They're everywhere. And they're basically the controllers of all our politicians. Express, of course, suggest insiders, ESS being the three letters used for insiders, like princess and duchess.
You know, all these people, like I hear about all these people, like these families, and I don't know if I've ever actually met these type of people in my life like that. Maybe it's because it's the
well, they don't usually hang around the tavern. They have a few islands of their own in the Caribbean region.
Like all those people in the family, all those people related to them, they don't associate with.
No, they go to certain places, like the south of France and places like the Caribbean islands that they control.
Oh, they really just separate themselves.
Bermuda has the letters that sound a lot like merde. English colonies.
So the type of people like, say, like your neighborhood or my neighborhood.
That's just lower class Masons who do the work. They do the fetching. They call them quarriers in Scotland.
You ever tell them that, like, yeah, you just fetch?
Yeah. I often ask people, how stupid can you be to put a sign up at election time? Haven't you figured out yet in your life that things don't change? You know? Hey, look at Barack Obama. You know? Yeah. Did he change?
Yeah.
No. They do what they are told to do, or they wouldn't be there in the first place.
I tell people that, but they tell me, oh, well, you got to do something. This is what they say. They say, well, I just don't like that guy, so I'm just going to vote for the other guy just because I don't like that guy.
Yeah, well. Hey, why don't you hit your head against the wall? Hey, it'll save you a lot of work. You know, you get the same result.
Yeah. Yeah, man, like me, I have a problem like talking to people my age. It's like talking to
children.
Yeah. It's like, whoa, man.
But remember that they're going to be your age one day.
Yeah.
And they may end up having to be 60 to be your age.
I guess everybody's different though, but there are people who are my age.
Yeah. You can't blame them until they're 40. And then you have the right to ask them questions.
I mean, I was like that at one time.
We were all like that at one time.
Yeah.
That's the programming you get from genetic and social engineering. And it's a tough hole to get out of.
If you were made basically like an egg to basically, and they put the knowledge in that egg, or isn't it basically like expected for you to realize earlier on, like say you were made?
Well, it depends on whether or not you were given RAM memory or ROM memory. If you're Asian, it would be almost impossible for you to guess what is going on. But because RAM memory allows an individual to make decisions on the spot and not simply use the things that are learned, it's expected that at one stage of the game, they will come to the right conclusions, and that becomes a danger for the system.
Yeah, but they had to make them like that because they had to fly, right?
Yeah. Unless you have that quality, you cannot write a new book. You can only follow instructions. And what they needed was a book on space, and that needed it.
So it was America and Russia and
Europe.
Yeah, they all were racing to basically see you can get to outer space, right?
Not racing because it was rigged.
Yeah.
I mean, anything that was learned by one side was leaked to the other side. And it was basically a lab testing different approaches. Was totalitarianism a better system for advancing science than capitalism?
It was the pillars, or the antipodes, I guess.
Yeah. But don't ever think they were competing. Gorbachev doesn't live in the U.S. for no reason.
Yeah, I know Gorbachev. He heads the he's part of the whole environmentalist movement. This guy was the guy that was head of the Soviet Union.
Yeah, that's why the blind thrust is going to happen at the base of Sault Ste. Marie in Gore Bay. Gore Bay. That's why Ronald Reagan used to hand out jelly beans, the what do you call those little ones, different flavors? Jolly Jellies.
Jolly Rancher?
Eh?
Jolly Rancher?
Jolly
Rancher? No, those are like hard candies. Jelly beans, I don't know the name, name brand.
Well, there's a special jelly bean that is about half the size of the normal jelly beans that we had as kids, but each one of them has a very distinct flavor, whereas the big jelly beans, they kind of all taste the same. There's too much sugar in them. But in the smaller ones, you can taste the banana flavor or peanut butter flavor or licorice flavor or coffee flavor or any of the fruit flavors. And Ronald Reagan used to hand those out to his friends, send them to them as presents, that kind of stuff.
Well, yeah, I was looking when I was doing some research, like on India and stuff. I thought Brahmins were the first, but I realized I came across information that said that the Brahmins actually descended from a group of people called the Brahmins.
Yeah, there's because of the translation from one language to another, there's always confusion with names, and there are Brahmins that cannot be confused with Brahmins. The important thing is the fact that they are suggestive, the names, of two in one.
Yeah.
Two breasts in a bra.
Yeah. Now that letter A, right? The letter A, by the way.
Yeah.
That's supposed to be like what? Like
a capital letter A. Yeah. It's got two equal parts and one hanging it together.
Yeah, because I was actually looking in Encyclopedia. They said that it actually meant like one. It meant like holding something held together.
Yeah.
They said. So
well, in construction, it's called an A-frame.
Mm.
So it's basically suggestive of male, female, with a Neanderthaler holding it together.
Mm. Mm. So that's Father, Son, Spirit. Father, Son, Holy Spirit.
Holy G host.
Yeah.
Genetically engineered host. Mother, Father, and Lab. Lab, of course, is ball.
Yeah, well. So what's the weather like up there today?
Well, we had some snow flurries today. We're just about at a foot of snow, I guess, on the ground. And I've got to go out in a few minutes because I'm doing a study. Yeah. So I'm going to have to leave you. I got some work to finish indoors here. And
you're always having fun, Glenn. You always got
it's never dull. Never dull here. That's why my friend Scotty wants to get back here.
I heard he's going to be
He has said he enjoys talking to you.
Oh, yeah, I enjoy talking to him because we could actually have a conversation and, I don't know, what's the word, build or...
Yeah.
He said, I heard he's going to be there for like a while this time.
Well, that's what he's doing. He's getting his life sorted out over there so that he can come here for a while. I think he's allowed under the rules of the Commonwealth to spend a year, but that time can be used towards getting landed immigrant status or something. So we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Okay, Glenn.
Talk to you again.
Tell me how that. If you want to make an email, post something. If you want, if you tell me how that experiment goes.
Yeah. I'm hoping we can have a result by the end of the year. We've had one successful trial that I don't know the details of, and two attempts where not enough people showed up because it was too cold. So tonight is the third attempt, and I hope it goes through.
Like, what do you look for when you're doing these?
Well, I'm basically the center, and I send out messages, either orally or mentally, but I have to be at the time surrounded by cats. And the cats act like repeaters on a local area network. And then at the other end, there are two separate groups, one attempting to decipher what I'm thinking or saying using electronic equipment, the other one using sensory equipment reading the cat's communications. The hope is that at the end of the study, it will be possible to prove in a court of law that there are means of communications beyond that which is used by people above ground. And we're not limited to AM, FM, infrared, ultraviolet, but more important, sensory communications, hair to hair. And maybe that communications network expands from cats to rabbits along the way.
Yeah, because you see these other animals full of hair.
Yeah. So in a place like the farm, there's likely to be more cats in one area and little or no cats in another area, but that other area might have rabbits. And so all of that is up in the air.
Oh, so we're led to believe, right, that animals just use body language to communicate.
Not true. It's not, I suggest, a complicated language structure like you get from the telephone, but it is sufficient for gathering the critical aspects of any communications, designed for self-protection more than anything else. So their animals are like repeaters. Water acts as a repeater for whales. Air acts as a repeater for people. And hair acts as a repeater for animals.
So how do you think the like that communication, that information travels from cat to cat, like through the air? Do you think it's a certain vibration, or?
Oh, there's no doubt that it acts upon electrical impulses and chemistry. The physics of it, I don't really get involved with. I got enough of my own stuff.
Yeah.
It would be more for a specialist to analyze than I.
Yeah, you need some type of tool to be able to read that, but nobody's even gone into that, like in the scientific.
But that's what the cell is working with. So we'll see. Gotta go.
Okay, Glenn.
Bye for now.
All right, bye.